It's coming up to 9:15 here on Sunrise. A doctor has today warned that veterans who served in Northern Ireland are more likely to suffer mental health issues many years after their service. This comes as the NHS launches a new scheme to help cater for veterans' mental health. We can talk to Tom Fox now, who is himself a veteran and the founder of Thoughtify, which deals with mental health issues and veterans. Lovely to speak to you this morning, Tom.
Thank you, Sarah.
Let's talk about veteran mental health, because there are concerns that suicide rates amongst veterans are going up, but there's actually no official record or any sort of collating of this data, so it could be far worse than is feared.
It is, but it's a difficult subject. The thing is with veterans, you know, the actual description of a veteran, it's you know, if you served one day in uniform in the British Army, then or the armed forces, then you're described as a veteran. So it's not really reflective of what the guys that are going through operational tours, for instance, that are seeing active combat on a regular basis, you know, potentially are. For instance, I joined in 1990. I spent 6 months in training before joining my battalion and then taking on operational tours. A guy that could have joined with me, not completed basic training, gets out, becomes a plumber or something, and then at the age of 44 commits suicide, could equally, you know, then be classed as a veteran that's suicided. But of course, those figures wouldn't be, they would skew. So it's very, very hard whether you know, can say the veterans are more at risk of suicide, or whether that's related to PTSD. And equally for the guys that have been on operational tours more recently, Afghanistan, Iraq. It's a very complicated subject, and how that would be monitored, I think, needs a lot more sort of looking into and thought. Yeah,
it's a very complicated subject, and it's only just starting to be unravelled. It's only the first couple of threads, really, but it's only in the last few years that people have started talking openly about mental health. So you talk about veteran mental health, people immediately think of those people who have toured Afghanistan, but you toured Northern Ireland, Bosnia, Iraq, and I would imagine back when you were touring in the 90s, mental health wasn't discussed at all.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it was very much seen, I think, it was very much seen as a weakness if you had have said that you were feeling, you know, if you were depressed or if you were anxious, or the sort of thoughts and things you get with PTSD, for instance, with the avoidance, the hyper-arousal, the hyper-vigilance. I mean, a lot of that is part of the job anyway. It's part of being a good soldier. But when it becomes, stress is a normal and healthy response, but when that stress becomes overpowering and turns into an illness, to be able to go forward and say, look, I don't think I'm feeling very well, I think there's something wrong with me, I could never have done that. I would have been ridiculed. Yeah,
because, you know, symptoms of this can manifest itself years after those in the armed forces have left active service. What was your particular journey in this area? How did it affect you?
I suppose I've been feeling the symptoms ever since the early 90s, really. Didn't really know what they were. And I developed very, very good coping mechanisms to mask that.
Were you affected while you were touring, or was it after you left?
While I was still in the army, while I was still serving. But I didn't realise that necessarily that I had problems. I was having panic attacks, flashbacks to certain things. So the hyper-arousal, the avoidance, probably over-medicating, a little bit of too much drink, and that sort of thing, which is quite normal. But when I left the force, or when I came out, when I started a career in civilian life, I mean, I was quite successful. I became a financial advisor. I worked for Lloyds and Barclays. I've worked for a very big IT business. I've worked alongside IBM in cognitive compute. So, you know, but I think probably from about 10 years ago, I started really experiencing symptoms, lack of sleep, loss of memory. At one point I had a scan, they thought I might have had a tumour. I had a suspected heart attack. I spent 2 days in the hospital.
And because you've been continuing normal civilian life, you probably didn't immediately link it to your time serving.
Absolutely not, no. And a lot of things I thought were normal. Of course they're not. So that's one of the problems, is guys don't necessarily realise that they're ill. The things that they're doing, the coping mechanisms they develop that have kept them safe over a certain amount of years, things that are learnt, you know, they're not necessarily healthy in civilian life, and that's the problem.
So with the work that you do now, what would your advice be to veterans? And I'm not talking about people who have recently left service, but those who maybe left 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, my time in combat stress, I saw guys there that are, you know, Falklands veterans, and older than that. You know, the first stage is to talk to someone, literally talk to someone.
Because the help is there, you just need to ask for it.
Yeah, you do, and a lot of times the help is from, you know, your peers, friends, you know, people that you wouldn't necessarily want to open up to because of that self-stigma. you'd be surprised, if you do talk to them and tell them your fears, you'll be surprised the amount of other guys that are actually feeling the same sort of problems and will open up to you because you've opened up to them. Okay. And that's really the start of getting yourself onto that road to recovery.
Yeah. OK, Tom, really interesting to speak to you this morning. Tom Fox from Thoughtify, thank you very much for coming to talk to us.
Thank you very much, Sarah Jane. Thank you.
Going to get an update on the sport now with Dave. Here he is.